Hey everyone, welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, certified financial planner and owner of Elevation Financial. You can find me at elevationfinancial.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're talking about personal financial security, a comprehensive guide to safeguarding your finances. It sucks to get hacked. Being secure is important. Financial security is more important than ever as technology advances. So we're going to talk today about implementing best practices to protect your sensitive information and your financial accounts from potential threats. First, some statistics, or a statistic. According to the Identity Theft Resource Center, or ITRC, there were 1,802 reported data breaches in the U.S. in 2022, which exposed over 422 million records. So that's a lot. This really highlights the growing threat of personal online data breaches in the US, and again, reinforces the importance of taking measures to protect your financial information from these cyber threats. So, like I said, we're going to talk today about some ways to protect your personal financial information. We got a lot to cover today, so let's jump in with number one. First tip, don't write passwords down. Writing passwords down on paper is insecure for several reasons. First of all, physical vulnerability. Paper can be lost, stolen, accidentally discarded. Anyone can come across the paper and see the password. Also, it's not encrypted. If it's on paper, it's just written in plain text, so it's unencrypted. So it's very exposed to anyone that might see it. Unauthorized access. Again, just if paper's laying around, people are more likely to just kind of pick it up and see it. And no control over the exposure to, in terms of who can see the information or who might come across it. It's also inefficient for management. Writing things down on paper makes it really hard to keep your passwords updated and organized. And this can lead to using the same password across multiple accounts or not updating your passwords on a regular basis, which increases vulnerability as well. So avoid writing passwords down on paper. Which leads us to number two, use a password manager. A password manager helps you store your passwords in a central database that keeps them organized, encourages you to use unique and complex passwords, has autofill features for websites, synchronizes across devices, helps you audit your passwords for security and decay, which means how long they've been used in the same context. Also enables two-factor authentication for the password manager as a whole, which means that even if your other sites that you're using the passwords on don't have two-factor enabled, you at least have that one layer of security at the top level, and then unique, strong passwords rolled out for the rest of it. So password managers can really help organize your passwords and keep you more secure. There are multiple options out there. I don't endorse or affiliate with any one particular, but some include LastPass, 1Password, Keeper, lots of options out there. Next, change your passwords on a regular basis and use strong passwords. So changing your password on a regular basis is really important because criminals often use automated tools to attempt to crack passwords through things like brute force attacks or exploiting data leaks. So let's say someone does get access to your passwords. It might be a matter of time before they get around to your password and trying to use it to log in. So if you change your passwords on a regular basis, that limits the amount of time that password is active and viable for the criminals. It also helps counter the threat of password, reuse. So if you use the same password across multiple accounts and you don't change them for a while, you're exposing a bunch of different accounts to the same password vulnerability. So changing them can, again, protect you from those targeted attacks where people just breach a whole system. Also, be sure using strong passwords as a sub note in this particular point. A strong password is longer. So when you choose a password, at least 12 to 14 characters or more, and typically a random combination of letters, numbers, and symbols will be ideal. But the length of the password is what matters the most. The longer the password, the more secure it is typically. Next, don't use the same password on multiple sites. We've talked about this already a little bit, but when you reuse the same password across different accounts, you create a single point of failure. So if one of your accounts gets compromised due to a data breach or hacking or phishing attack or something, the attacker then can gain access to all the other accounts that share that same password. Kind of a domino effect where multiple accounts are compromised simultaneously. So Again, make sure you use different passwords on all of your sites or accounts. Next, lock your phone and set it to erase after 10 failed attempts. So be sure you put a passcode on your phone. That's kind of a simple thing we all do, hopefully. But then also set it to erase after 10 failed attempts so that if someone just tries to brute force and just kind of guess past codes over and over, they won't get very far. They'll either stop trying because the data will be erased, or they'll just let the data be erased and they don't have access to your data anyway. So either of those is preferable to somebody actually getting into your data. Next, set your phone to delete messages after a certain amount of time. This is a good idea because it helps protect your privacy and sensitive information that might be contained in things like text messages, emails, chats, etc. Because if you automatically have those messages delete after a certain period of time, you reduce the amount of sensitive information stored on your phone in that window of time. So it limits the potential damage if your device is lost, stolen, or compromised. Next tip, keep credit and debit cards concealed until purchase. So if you're at a store in line during checkout, some of us it's tempting to kind of get your card out, have it just in your hand and ready to go. But that really exposes your card information and the card number to people who might be behind you. There might be even security cameras in the store that could record your card information. And then that has your card information somewhere else where you can't control. Somebody might see it. So keep your card concealed until the very last minute when it's time to actually pull it out and use it at the checkout. Next tip, be vigilant for skimmers. Skimming devices are tools used by criminals to steal credit or debit card information by capturing the data stored on the card's magnetic stripe. Gas stations are often common targets for this, ATMs as well, any kind of point of sale terminal. Ways to look for skimming devices: inspect the card reader before you use an ATM or a gas pump. Make sure you examine it for unusual attachments, loose parts, signs of tampering. Wiggle the card slot. Gently wiggle the card slot to see if it's securely attached. A lot of skimming devices might be, loosely fitted over the original card slot, so any movement could indicate the presence of a skimmer. Look for hidden cameras. Look for small cameras or cameras that look out of place that might be positioned to capture information like your PIN. Make sure you use well lit and busy locations whenever possible. So choose locations for ATMs or gas pumps that are well trafficked and well lit. Also, goes without saying, monitor your account regularly and look for fraud on your statements. And use contactless if possible. Things like Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or whatever your phone device can use for contactless payments. That can also add a layer of security because your card number is not out and exposed. All right, next tip, use a VPN on public networks. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and this is a tool that encrypts your connection as you're on the internet. Things like Wi-Fi hotspots in cafes, airports, hotels. These are all public networks, often unencrypted, and it can be possible for criminals to intercept your data on these public networks. So a VPN helps mask your IP, encrypt your traffic, encrypt your data, and that can really increase your security on these public networks. Some examples of VPNs are Hotspot Shield, NordVPN, Surfshark. Again, no affiliation or endorsement, but those are some examples. Next, buy a shredder and shred all sensitive documents. Things like bank statements, credit card bills, tax forms, medical records. These all contain confidential information. And throwing these documents in the trash or recycling bin leaves them vulnerable to dumpster diving. Dumpster diving is a tactic used by criminals to search for valuable information in discarded trash. People actually go through dumpsters, whether it's at your home or other points along the chain of custody, so to speak, of trash. If they get access to those documents, they can build a profile on you and steal your identity or financial information. So shred all sensitive documents. Get in the habit of shredding anything that has sensitive information on it. Next tip, keep your software up to date. This includes operating systems. So any kind of software on your computer, including and especially your operating system and web browsers, for example, keep those up to date because often those vulnerabilities will be patched during subsequent software updates. Next, enroll in identity theft protection. I'm a big fan of this. ID theft protection includes things like monitoring. They monitor your credit, public records, look for suspicious activity. They'll send you alerts when suspicious activity occurs, such as new accounts being opened in your name. They'll give you recovery assistance. If your identity is stolen, they assist in the recovery of your accounts and your identity as well. Also, insurance coverage, things like reimbursing you for expenses related to ID theft, legal fees, lost wages, costs associated with credit repair. So, I'm a big fan of ID theft protection. And there are many services out there. Again, no specific endorsement, but some of those include LifeLock, Identity Guard, Aura, a lot of options out there. Next tip. This is a big one and something very easy to do and super helpful. Activate two-step verification on all your accounts. So two-step verification is also known as two-factor authentication, or 2FA for short. It adds an extra layer of security because it requires putting in a code that is texted to you or sent to a particular app on your phone in order to authenticate the login. So even if someone else has your username and your password to an account, they would have to have access to your phone or another device to be able to log into your account. So two-factor authentication adds a very secure layer of authentication that really helps increase the security of your accounts. Next, use a strong password on your computer and set a screensaver lock after 15 minutes or some short amount of time. Um, so your computer at home or your laptop is a pretty open point of vulnerability. It's a point of exposure for many people because we don't have strong passwords on our computer, or maybe we don't have a screensaver lock. So you want to be sure that your screensaver kicks in after a short amount of time, let's say 15 minutes, and you've got a strong password on your computer, because so much stuff is saved on our computer. Even, logins to websites, your sessions are open to various, banking sites. So make sure your computer is not a point of failure. Next, turn on disk encryption on your computer. Disk encryption means that the data on your disk itself is encrypted. So if someone does get access to your computer, they can't just pull the drive out and access the data directly. The data on the drive will be encrypted, which keeps it more secure. Next, this one is a big pet peeve of mine. Do not send sensitive information over email. I see this a lot, even with professionals that should know better. Sending information over email is inherently insecure. That data can be intercepted along the way and is typically in plain text. And so you want to make sure that you do not send anything over email that includes things like social security numbers, banking information, credit card information, tax returns, anything that is sensitive information. I would not send over email. Additionally, email is stored on servers that can be sitting on a server or sitting on your computer somewhere. It just kind of sits there on devices and servers for indefinite periods of time sometimes. And that can be a point of vulnerability as well, where someone can access that server or your computer and see that information. So when you're sending sensitive information, use a secure method. There's some tools out there for securely sending information. One of them is called SendInc, SENDINC.com. That one is free. There's a number of options out there that you can use for sending sensitive information. Next, limit Facebook posts and other networks as well to only be seen by friends. If someone has public access to a social network where you post lots of personal identifying information, stuff about your family, trips you've gone on, things like that, people can start to build a profile of you and start to build enough of a resource of information on you and your personal habits to create a profile they can use for things like phishing attempts or social engineering or getting into accounts using recovery questions. So limit your Facebook posts to only people only friends, so public views are not accessible. Next, review and remove unnecessary access to business pages. If you have any business pages, whether you run a business or even just an organization you're with, make sure that you regularly audit admins on your account and remove anyone who doesn't need to be attached in an admin on your account. Because if their account is compromised, that can lead to compromising in your account and get access to your personal information. Along the same lines, audit third-party apps accessing your social accounts. So a lot of times we log into sites and enable third-party apps in our Facebook account or other social accounts. Those can build up over time. remove the ones you aren't using anymore to reduce the points of exposure that those apps might introduce. All right, next, back up your data. If you back up your data, this increases your security because you're, first of all, just safeguarding against data loss, but it can also mitigate the impact of security incidents like ransomware attacks, where criminals will encrypt your data and demand payment for its release. With the backup in place, you can recover your data without having to pay the ransom, which minimizes damage to your information. So there's a few different ways to back up your data. The 3-2-1 backup rule is a good rule of thumb to follow. Keep 3 copies of your data using 2 different types of storage media with at least 1 copy stored off-site or in a secure cloud storage service. So some cloud services include things like Backblaze or Carbonite. There are a lot of ways to do this as well. Next, clear your browser history and cookies on a regular basis. This not only protects your privacy, but also reduces tracking by third-party websites, and it can prevent data breaches because some attackers gain access to your browsing history and cookie information, which might contain sensitive information like login credentials or financial data or other personal identifiable information. So cleaning these things out regularly is a good security practice. Also, be alert for phishing with a PH. Phishing is a type of attack that steals sensitive information, such as your login credentials or credit card numbers, by tricking you into divulging information by posing as a trustworthy entity like your bank or your email provider or a social media platform. So typically works like this. The attacker sends an email or message that appears to be from a legitimate source, even using a convincing logo, language, other details to appear genuine. The message usually contains a sense of urgency or some kind of call to action that prompts the victim to take immediate action, like clicking a link or downloading an attachment or entering personal information onto a fake website. And then once the victim follows these instructions, they're directed to a fake website or page that mimics the real one. And the site might ask the victim to enter their username and password into the site, which is then captured by the attacker. And now they have your login information. So to protect yourself against phishing, here are some tips to follow. Be cautious of any unsolicited messages that ask for personal information. Be super skeptical whenever it happens. Verify the source of the message by checking the sender's email address or phone number. Contact the organization directly to verify the information is legitimate. Avoid clicking links or downloading attachments from sources you may not trust. Hover over the link, especially to verify the destination before clicking. Sometimes the link will appear to be one thing, but when you hover, it'll show you some weird address that looks very suspicious. So hover over links before you click on them. There are some anti-phishing tools like web filters and spam blockers that can help as well. And just look for signs like, poor grammar, spelling errors, weird inaccuracies in the message. So be very vigilant and skeptical of messages that might be phishing. And then finally, last on my list, use a budget tracking tool. My favorite is YNAB, which is short for You Need a Budget. And a budget tracking tool is a great way to monitor your finances and make sure that you are paying close attention to every transaction that comes across your accounts. That way you're viewing and seeing very clearly what transactions are coming in. You can identify things that look suspicious more quickly. So a budget tool like YNAB can be a great way to monitor that information and be on the lookout for stuff that might be suspicious. All right, so that is my list of personal financial security tips to help you avoid getting hacked, to help you avoid having issues with data compromises and financial information being compromised. So even if you don't do all of these, try to pick up over time as much of these tips as possible to make sure that you're keeping your money and your financial and personal information as secure as possible. All right, with that, as always, I'm happy to chat anytime. You can reach out through my website at elevationfinancial.com. You're welcome to reach out and book a complimentary money session on my site. If you want to consider working with me and kind of see how that works, you're welcome to do that, or just ask questions. No pressure. You can just book a meeting and ask some questions and kind of see where it goes from there. So again, elevationfinancial.com. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.